Motion 103 has been making headlines in Canada over the past few weeks, with the Liberal and Conservative parties coming down on either side of the issue. The motion was authored and presented by Iqra Khalid to the Canada House of Commons on December 5, 2016, but was tabled and received little media attention at that time, until recently in the aftermath of the Quebec mosque attacks. The Quebec attack and similar attacks are truly horrible, especially when you think that some of these people have come here to escape violence and finally feel safe. And then to have something like that happen here, it would bring it all back for them, and it's even more traumatizing. But would this motion really prevent something like that from happening? So what is the motion? Motion 103 calls on the Government of Canada to recognize the need to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear, to condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systematic racism and religious discrimination, and for initiatives to study the development of a government-wide approach to reduce or eliminate systematic racism and religious discrimination, such as Islamophobia, including the collection of data on hate crime reports. Now, the Conservative and Liberal parties and media are at odds over this, with the Conservatives claiming that this is yet another attempt by the Liberal Party to infringe freedom of speech, and the Liberals insisting that this has nothing to do with freedom of speech, and emphasizing that this is in fact a motion and not a bill, and it will never become a law. Okay, so let's deconstruct this. The government should recognize the need to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear. I just can't help but feel that there is a climate of hate and fear because that is what all the media ever talks about. When you make everything a social justice issue, when you claim that everything is sexist and everything is racist.
Because when you start learning about systems, everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
When you make up fake stories about getting attacked and victimized, when you outright slander people by calling them racist and disgusting, inevitably that also contributes to creating a climate of hate and fear. I'd also like to know what they mean by the government should recognize. Have there not already been plenty in government talking about these issues? Are there already not policies that address these very things? The use of the very vague language leaves it up to interpretation, does it not? Secondly, they say that the government should condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systematic racism and religious discrimination. Again, same thing. What do they mean by condemn? When has anyone in the government ever advocated for Islamophobia? How is it not already being condemned on the daily? Do you want a statement that says we condemn Islamophobia? I'm pretty sure that already exists as well. This is another thing that the progressives have been doing a lot, this demanding of condemnation, public denouncing of anyone they deem unworthy, the guilt by association if you dare to associate or acquaint yourself with someone who is guilty of wrong thing. And again, I ask, in what ways has the Canadian government already not done this? Define your terms, because this can be interpreted as demanding further action, which then gets into the law and policy territory. And the Conservative Party is also saying the same thing. What do you mean by Islamophobia? Define your terms. The Liberals are adamant that this has absolutely nothing to do with free speech, and those who criticize and speak out against Islam are free to do so. Except we already know what they mean when they say acceptable criticism.
Thank God you're here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the crucial point of confusion is that we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right.
And that is it's intellectually ridiculous. Even it gets
So hold on,
conflated
are
with
you
racism.
the person who understands the officially codified doctrine of Islam? You're the interpreter of that, so you can say, well, this is...
I'm actually well educated on this topic.
I'm asking you. So you're saying if I criticize you're saying that Islamophobia is not a real thing. That if you're critical of something...
Well, it's not a real thing when we do it.
Right.
Well, no,
it really isn't.
I'm not denying that certain people are bigoted against Muslims as people.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Big of you.
But
But why are you so hostile about this
Because it's gross. It's racist.
It's not. But it's so not.
It's like saying
It's
those
so not.
stateless, shifty Jew.
You're not listening
Absolutely
to
not.
what we are saying.
Or how about the time when they were claiming that the Charlie Hebdo attacks were justified because of Islamophobia? Where was the government condemnation then? I mean, the Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled Majid Nowruz, a liberal practicing Muslim, as an anti-Muslim extremist and an Islamophobe just because he's simply trying to reform Islam, and calls out radical political extremists who probably now want him dead. Where was the government condemnation when they were issuing out a death list? Finally, the motion proposes that the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage should look at how the government could develop an approach to reducing or eliminating systematic racism and religious discrimination, including Islamophobia, and to collect data to conceptualize hate crime reports. So let's say that the government does develop an approach to reduce or eliminate systematic racism and religious discrimination. I just wonder how else would the government implement this initiative if not by using laws and policies? And once again, define your terms and make sure everyone agrees on them. There are many who feel that systematic racism is still up for debate. And regardless, even if it wasn't, how do we know that a racialized approach is the best way to address these issues? This is the problem with identity politics. It's reducing you to the group that you come from and trying to address things on a collective basis, rather than trying to find ways to make things better for people as individuals. We are more than the groups that we come from, and it's reductionary to assume that people have the same needs based on the color of their skin or the religion that they believe in. Now, the liberals are claiming that the reason they emphasize Islamophobia and not just all forms of racism and discrimination is because of the rise of hate crimes against Muslims in Canada over the past 2 years, which may be true. Khalid later told reporters that Islamophobia could be defined as discrimination of Muslim people or people who are of the Muslim faith. So assuming that that would be her basis of what she would constitute as a hate crime, she still doesn't state explicitly that they are discriminated against because they are Muslim, and not just happen to be a Muslim who is a victim of a crime, such as a Muslim-owned convenience store getting robbed. And are these self-report statistics? Because there would definitely be respondent bias, where a Muslim individual who is newer to Canada would be more likely to assume that any discrimination they feel is due to their religion and not just people being assholes. But what I really fear is if this motion ever enters the realm of online bullying and hate crimes. The fact is that the progressives have been very vocal about doing something about online harassment, and that would very much enter into the risks to freedom of speech territory. Khalid has also gone on to graphically describe to the media the profanity and abuse she has received online since introducing this motion. One could argue that by presenting this motion, they have actually increased Islamophobia instead of doing anything to stop it. So clearly the language in the motion is very vague and open to interpretation. In my opinion, at the end of the day, it's the people who need to be the solution to these problems, and not the government. And what is vital to that is that we need better ways of communicating and being able to discuss and resolve issues with those that are different than us. This motion is not going to help that. This motion claims that it has nothing to do with hindering free speech, but regardless, it's certainly contributing to creating a climate of hate and fear by letting us know that some things are not okay and that the government is going to start doing something about it. Coming from a country where it is already against the law to criticize and speak against Islam, I do not support this motion, and I don't think you should either. Thanks, guys, for listening. Remember to share, like, subscribe, all of those buttons, all of those things. See you guys next time.